Board of Education, Lane Community College is in order. Nicole, will you please call the roll?
Kevin Alltucker,
Here.
Austin Fulnagi, I believe is excused absence. Jesse Maldonado,
Here.
Steve Mittal,
Here.
Zach Mulholland,
Here.
Jerry Rust,
Here.
Julie Weisman.
Here.
Thank you very much. I'd like to appoint Jesse as to look and make sure that I get the correct name and who is in line next to speak. All right?
Happy to do that, Jerry.
Okay. Nicole, we're going to start the meeting with our land recognition. Will you please recognize someone?
Thank you, Jerry. We have Laura Pelletier in the audience today.
I'd like to start our
Thank
meeting.
you very much.
Excuse me. I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to recognize that we are looking at Lane Community College tonight through an equity lens. Who is affected? And who are the involved stakeholders? How can we mitigate harm and provide space for healing?
Trustee Rust. This
All
is
right.
Trustee Rust.
Yes.
Can you hear me? So
Yes, I can. Thank you.
okay, great. So 1C, first we need to have the board adopt the agenda.
Chair Rust, I'm
Call for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, the work session agenda has been adopted. So we're now going to go to discussion items on the 3-year financial plan. Madam President,
Yes, thank you. Thank you very,
would you
very
like to
much.
introduce this?
Absolutely. I want to make sure that according to the agenda, because the agenda was adopted, 1E, responses to information requests. Trustee Rust, if we could go back a little bit and do 1E.
Okay.
And we, okay, if we could. Do you see that as part of your script there?
Yeah, go ahead on it.
Okay.
1E.
Are the responses to information requests, there were no questions for this time, but it is part of your agenda. I'm sure that there are no questions related to that, but I wanted to make sure that we covered that. Yes.
There was a request for questions regarding tonight's work session. So I sent in a number of questions. I believe it was Tuesday last week. Not seeing in the packet. I think you said those will be answered, all of those during the presentation. That's built into the presentation to answer those questions?
Yes, they were shared with the finance area, and they will be covered this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Rust, I'm going to
Okay.
move on to the discussion item now.
I'm
Okay.
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I will ask Kara Flatz, Vice President of Finance and Operations, and Jonathan Campbell, Director of Budget and Planning, to come and lead you through, just to introduce this topic, lead you through some slides. They will respond to all of the questions that were shared. If for some reason there's something that's missed, please raise the question, and they will respond. Kara and Jonathan.
Yes, thank you for having us here, and thank you for the work session. I appreciate the time on your busy schedules. This is some of this is a recap, what's in here, and some of this is discussion moving forward, but I just want to make sure we know the goals of today is to make sure you understand what is the 3-year mitigation plan and the impacts of not approving that. And I just wanted to provide a couple thoughts to start with. The thing we're asking for when we discuss this mitigation plan is kind of 4 key things that I would say. 1, we're asking for you to acknowledge that we have a fiscal sustainability dilemma that we need to work through. 2, that we've been managing financial challenges reactively. This switches us to a multi-year proactive approach is our goal. And 3, without this plan, I think we go into crisis decisions, and some of the other information, I'll give you a historical view of what we've done as a college in the last few years that I am aware of. And then 4, this plan is structured, it's measurable, it's transparent, and there's a commitment to continue to bring this back to the board. So I just want to make sure I qualify with those things. If we can go to the next slide. Even one more. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I know it goes fast. And this will be later that we can also discuss, but these are potential negative impacts if this plan is not approved, and I just want to make sure there's an understanding of this. Of course, there's a board policy out there. We've had a lot of discussion about that. One of the bigger impacts is also, not just bigger, I won't say that. One of the other impacts is the leading to the lack of direction for the college to continue to move forward, which kind of focuses on that, acknowledging that we have a fiscal, I won't say crisis, but we have a dilemma. You know, the college has a healthy budget. We have things we need to do, but there are strategies that we can do to make this more effective. So we need the direction and the support to continue to move forward with this. And one of the things I'll just continue to reiterate is cash flow as a finance person is always one of my biggest concerns. So we don't want to have to go get debt, which is costly. I think I've told previous board members, and I don't know if it's new information, but historically, the last loan the college received is a short-term loan. It was $5 million, but it cost the college $250,000 to get that $5 million. And that was strictly a cash flow issue. So those are some of the ramifications. I say we could buy people with that, but there's other investments we could do with $250,000. So keep that in mind. And the cost of debt is higher now than it was then. So those are things. And we want to be able to strategically keep investing in things like part-time courses. That's been a lot of discussion that you're hearing as feedback. We do need to strategically keep investing that money in those sections so we can teach those courses. So this here, partly for your reference, happy to take questions as we move forward. But if you move to the next slide. And I'm not sure how much people are aware of the things in the past now. No, I came at the end of fiscal year 2024, so a lot of these decisions were already made in 23, 24. But just to give you a recap, you know, part of the reason the college has been where they have been with ending fund balance and making some ground, we lose ground, we make ground, is because there have been changes through the year. So in fiscal year 2023, there was a $1.8 million either influx or change. 1.4 million came from COVID funding, which is the non-sustainable revenue that I talk about. And then there was a reduction of 400,000. Come to 2024, it looks like there was a $2.8 million reduction in general areas across the college. It was hard to delineate what exactly, there wasn't one pinpoint area, but it was throughout the college. 2025, when I was here, we did have a 1-year reduction in year that we did that has materials and services reduction, which is why we keep saying that materials and services reduction has come again and again and again, and that is creating an issue for deans to have the funding to do what they need to do in their classroom. So that's an area we're not going to encourage continued reductions because there's just not much left in that. We had IT reductions and we held positions. 2026, that's where you see the $3.5 million, the $1.77 million in vacancy savings, and the other areas that we've talked about come September. So, sorry, quick recap. Next slide. This, I'm just giving you a recap of where our projected forecast is. This is really for your reference, this page and then the next page. If you don't mind, Nicole, just moving on. I'm trying to be quickly so we have your time for your questions. Here's projected ending fund balance without a mitigation plan, and where the 10% ending fund balance, just something we've already reviewed. So next page. I just wanted, when we had the discussion in July, this is where the board values come in. And I'll just recap, number one, we heard fiscal sustainability, student success and equity, staff and faculty, and community responsiveness in that order. And that's something we'll just continue to bring up because we are using that to make decisions and to keep moving forward. It is very important to us, and we appreciate all the time you spent doing that. Next page. I'm trying to break this out in a more simplistic way of what I'm going to call strategic and financial investments, because there's some that are strategic and some that are just financial investments for the college. So what we're saying year by year, just to keep it simple, is we're requesting $3 million mitigation amount in fiscal year 2027. In that will be $1.52 million in strategic and financial investments. That will include moving aviation to general fund, which continues to have part of that sub-fund deficit, which is also a cash flow issue. It's just not sustainable. Investing more in part-time budgets. Again, the forecast still includes about $800,000, but we're finding that it's about $1 million every year that deans need to keep the courses going, especially if we want to continue to grow that enrollment. And we still have vacancy savings, so that being our current roster is full with the exception of a handful. We have to fund those positions, so we need to reinvest in those areas.
You mentioned $1 million to keep particular programs running. Can you elaborate on that?
It's a vacancy savings. What I'm saying is, if you look in that forecast, we have a 1% vacancy savings rate. What we're seeing as of today is we have all but about 5 positions in general fund that are filled. So if we don't fund those positions, we have to reduce those off our roster. So that's what I'm saying. It's vacancy savings. So our goal this year, we labeled them with themes for each year. So our goal for fiscal year 2027 is similar to 2026, which is just a break-even year. We don't anticipate bringing any more into the ending general fund balance. We're just hoping to break even that year. If we go to the next year, fiscal year 2028, we have a little more room. We'll still have a $2.5 million mitigation amount. We'll have $2.56 million in the strategic and financial reinvestments, which is where you see the wheel a little more active. We'll continue to invest more in the part-time budgets. Vacancy savings gets a little bit smaller because we funded majority of it in the year before. We do have the deficit elimination. That is the sub-fund deficit elimination that'll help us get this paid off by fiscal year 2029. This new program development would include Lane Forward Fund, which isn't funded this year. We paused that for a year in other program investments, and then increasing for deferred maintenance and IT by $450,000. And this is a year where we would put back into the ending general fund balance $1.6 million. So we start to make up ground. So this is a recovery year for us. I am suggesting there is a board policy that talks about a stabilization reserve fund that we start investing $100,000 a year and transferring that into a protected account so that if the college ends up in a situation where they need to tap into $100,000 really won't get that far, but if we start creating a little savings account somewhere in the college, we could tap into that if there's a one-time, not an ongoing, but a one-time thing that comes up. So I'm suggesting $100,000 that year. Next year. This year is our celebration year. We would be achieving the 10.4% in our ending fund balance. We invest $580,000 in strategic and financial reinvestments from this year. That would be, again, the stabilization reserve account. Ending fund balance would be $3 million put into the general fund. Again, part-time budgets, maintaining the vacancy savings, new program development, and deferred maintenance and IT. So just continuing to grow those strategically. And what we're saying, though, after this year is we would have the funding, if we paid off the sub-fund deficits by that year, we should have $1.5 to $2 million, $1.5 to $1.9 million available in the year after to continue those strategic reinvestments. So this is the celebration year. We would have our own internal debt paid off to the college and really have created that financial stability we're looking for. Next slide. This is just put into a chart, and what's in the mitigation goals, we started with three things. Discontinuing deficit spending, because that's where you're continually spending and overspending in those areas, restoring the 10% ending fund balance, and then continuing to fund those strategic reinvestments. So that was kind of the priority order. If you look at that mitigation plan, this is all those slides kind of put in a one-stop shopping kind of area. Just for your reference. Next page. And there is a section in the plan that has requirements. I want to make sure people understand this is a continual living document, at least year to year, but there are triggers. So we do know that there's a potential for state funding cuts come February, March, if the state makes that decision. We've been told up to $2.5 million per year. That'll depend on what the state legislature does and all of that piece. So if that were to come into play, we would be back here having a discussion. But so that would include that 3% change in state funds, because for us, that would be 3%. If there's a change in the ending fund balance, if there's a 3% enrollment change, if staffing costs exceed budget levels, or we have unexpected costs or legislative changes that affect budgets beyond what the state cut would be. There's a yearly review, and we just want to focus on year to year, which is why you have the year-to-year review that will continue to have that conversation, but knowing this is our goals moving forward. Next slide. Again, I just wanted to regroup and make sure people didn't have any questions or any comments on this particular slide, and just focusing on there are some areas that we really could work on and continue to move forward. Next, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I want to recognize Jesse to recognize from his seat, recognize those who are ready to ask questions. I will not recognize from here for the time being. Jesse, please.
No, nobody
Are we done?
I think Kara still has some more to go, Jerry, so.
I'll wait till the end.
Thank you.
I think that wraps up this part of the presentation. I know you sent some questions in. I have answers prepared for those, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to ask them while we're here, so I can make sure I answer them equally. And then there's a few that I'm going to have to follow up on. So I understand what you're saying.
If you can walk through each of them that you have responses for, I'd appreciate that.
Kara, I wonder if we could start with the historical question. There was a question about the 3-year plan prior to, say, 10 years ago, because I think it was mentioned, is what the question says. It was mentioned that you said that that the college has been under the 10% for about 10 years. And so there was a question about whether or not the previous boards had received a 3-year plan prior to those 10 years. And for that, I think we have to call on Brett to see if Brett recalls at all if that were the case.
I'm going to do some searching.
Okay, then.
Come back to me in a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
I would just also ask, for transparency's sake, Kara, if you wouldn't mind reading the question that was asked. I'm sure you probably were planning, but just.
Yeah, I was planning, and I'm trying to find them because I saved them on here, so I apologize.
I forwarded them to you
Yes,
again, so they're
you
at the top
totally-
of your list.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I do remember that one. So please provide a list of potential cuts for the 3-year plan equal in the amount of the cuts called for in the plan in order from least to most painful. Go ahead.
I think she asked you to start with the last one, so.
Oh, Brett is actually looking for
Sorry,
that answer.
yes. Brett is checking to see if there was. I did not find anything in any of the board packet history. There's nothing that we saw in any of our budget documents or files that saw a former plan.
And that question, so people know what we're referring to, the board was supposed to approve 3-year plans whenever it fell below 10% ending fund balance. It was stated the college has now been below 10% ending fund balance for around 10 years straight. Did previous iterations of the board approve 3-year plans during this time? If there are previous 3-year plans the board approved, please provide them. If not, why was this step not taken in previous years? And Brett's looking at that now for the,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
So a list of potential cuts for the 3-year plan equal to each of those cuts, that is what we are working on now. We do not have a list of those, but what we are committed to doing, and I think that is on the next slide, that this one, the what's next. So the plan would be to approve the mitigation plan in January. We will discuss budget parameters in January, but our plan is to bring forward, working with Budget Development Subcommittee and College Council and the college community. We just opened the next section of the survey to take feedback. The list of proposals for the first year, we're taking them 1 year at a time, and have that discussion internally. It's important to maintain that with our Budget Development Subcommittee and College Council because they feed up to each other, and then bring it to the board at the beginning of March. That is that's going to be a heavy lift, but we think we can do that. So the plan would be, if the board supports this, to doing the work. Because the hard part's going to be if the board is saying we don't support the concept that we should reduce by $3 million. There's a lot of time, effort, and hard discussions that happen within the college community that can create a discord if there isn't an appetite to make some hard decisions, if that makes sense. So what we're asking for is that support for that conversation. And I think historically what we found, just talking with people and managers across the colleges, they have done that work. They brought all these conversations forward to the board, and then the board doesn't take action on any of them. And it hurts relationships because it's a lot of work to put in all of the discussion to get to the point where we feel comfortable, yep, everything is going to have an impact. There is no doubt about that. But is that impact enough to get the college financially on track? So we don't have that list right now. We are still working on that list, and we'll bring that forward at the beginning of March, that first March meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just state for myself, I feel like what we have is a half of a plan. It says if we were to cut $6 million, this is how we would spend it. But there are trade-offs, and I don't feel comfortable tacitly approving $6 million a year of cuts and having no idea where those cuts are going to come from. So I think it makes sense, actually, for the board to have both wings of this plan so that we actually know what the trade-offs are and what we're actually giving up when we say we're going to approve this plan, because I don't think that's clear at all right now.
And what we're asking for is the support that we do have financial stability issue that we need to work on. And do we have that agreement to move forward to make those decisions? That's what we're asking for with a plan. We're not saying all of the how is in there, but we're bringing that forward. And we've been transparent since I've been here and brought all the information that we can that we've been asked for.
Yeah, I understand your point, trustee. What the board policy 6230, I believe it is, says is that we are responsible for bringing a plan to the board. The plan is based on a forecast. That is why we bring updates to the board at least twice a year regarding that forecast, because the numbers can change. So we are doing what we believe is our responsibility to bring that to the board.
Kevin?
Thank you. The way I understand the process, which is probably an incomplete understanding, but if we were to do what Trustee Mulholland suggests, it seems to me that it would be bypassing the college process. So what I heard you say is that once the board approves the plan, then you go back through your college decision-making process and your information gathering process to then develop a so-called list. So if we were to do that now, we would exclude that college process.
I would say that you would make make the process really a little bit more challenging for us. We know that we have to create a fiscal year 27 budget that is actually a balanced budget. And so that process becomes even more challenging if we don't have a number that we're aiming for. The $3 million, $2.5 million in each of those subsequent years are an incremental approach to get to the 10% in ending fund balance. We think that it is going to create less shock to the institution if we do it in an incremental fashion. On top of that, we have projected state cuts, and we don't know what they might be. We're going to be waiting, just like everyone else, to February, March timeframe. But if that does come to pass, we will be coming back to the board with that additional amount of that kind of revenue to let the board know that here it is, we've got our number, and ask the board what we do with that too. So we've got some ideas about how to do that so that it does shock the college in a minimal fashion, but we will certainly be coming back to the board then too. So this is the first step, and we would love to have your support.
And I also just wanted to clarify, it is 3 million we're discussing this year, not 6 million, just to make sure that was clear. Yeah.
The board is being asked for tacit approval for the college to move forward with a budget process that will result in $6 million of cuts to annual budgets over the next 2 years. That's a lot of money. And there are very, very, very important programs and student services that money funds. And I agree that we are in a fiscal situation where we need to have honest conversations about where that money is going to come from. And this board needs to at least have some outline of where that money is going to come from before it says, yes, go forth and do. You're worried about going out to the campus community and saying, well, we're going to cut this and we're going to cut that, and then you're going to bring it back to the board and we're not going to approve it. Well, the way you avoid that is by telling us beforehand what the outline of what you're going to ask the campus community to do is. So I'm just going to state again, for myself, I will not feel comfortable passing a 3-year fiscal plan that has no mention of where these $6 million in annual cuts are going to come from. Thanks.
Thank you, trustee.
And I think Brett has information to answer the other question.
Yeah, and I encourage, if you'd like to follow along at home or do further research, prior to the board renumbering this board policy earlier in the year, the former board policy number was board policy 245. So if you do a search of previous board minutes or actions, look for board policy 245. What you'll find, one of the earlier results is in November and December of 2019, the board considered both a plan that was presented to comply with the policy and a revision. At the time, the board policy was that the plan presented to get back in compliance of the 10% had to be within 2 years, and the board asked to revise it to 3 years to make it a little easier to take the 3 years to get there. But the plan presented in December of 2019 was a 3-year plan totaling about $4.5 million. And so there were multiple times before that as well that plans were presented. Sometimes they were presented with far less detail than the current plan that's before you. It really was the prerogative of the board at the time. But if you want to go further than 2019, the fall of 2019, the minutes for those meetings is in the library of board docs. So if you go to the library, under minutes prior to 2019, you can find 20 years worth of minutes there as well, but just make sure you're looking for the right board policy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Kevin, do you still have?
Yeah, but if someone else needs to go, sure.
Steve, and then we'll go to Zach.
just realized I don't have a microphone. So I think my comment, I suppose it's not in relation to what you had to say, Brett. Responding to what I'm hearing Zach say, he makes good points, by the way. Like, I always appreciate things Zach has to say and think about him quite a lot. But I guess what I also want to distinguish a little bit. I feel like what we're being asked to do tonight is to recognize and agree with the math is sort of the first and foremost, that there is a budget problem as defined or explained by Kara, that we have a problem. We'll end up at whatever it is, 5% or something like that, within 3 years if we don't make some change. So for me, first and foremost is just a recognition of that. That naturally, the math and the logic, by the way, that naturally leads us to the next step. But it also takes, I think it does one other thing maybe that, Zach's saying, yeah, but if we don't approve, all of it or get some sense of what the other side of the coin looks like now, we might just back out or, not agree because it's too painful or whatever, 3 to 4 months from now when you bring something back. I guess that's maybe where I'd want to distinguish a little bit. If we agree with the math now, that forces us to do something in March. So even if the thing that you bring has some pain points that are just too much and people at the podium or whatever it is, make a compelling argument, we can't just say, sorry, we're not doing it. We then have to say, we're not doing that, but we're going to do something else. So it keeps us, focused and committed to the reductions that the math calls for.
I would say that would be true. I think we're going to have the budget document has to be prepared by, what's the date, Jonathan? April. The budget document has to be prepared by April. This is for FY27, and we believe that it's the budget needs to balance because we'll be taking it to the budget committee late April. And so, yes, that's the timeline here. So there would be that opportunity, I would believe.
Yeah, if I just make just one more sentence, just the other thing that it does, I think, Zach, by putting this in motion now, is it sets some expectations from the board, not just to Kara and her staff, but to the deans and all of the discussions that happen throughout the institution over the next several months. Have that as their understanding. The board has said, you must deliver a thing that gets us these particular reductions. If we don't do that, then those discussions that are happening throughout the college don't have any guidelines to them, don't have any discipline or focus to them.
Zach, yeah.
May I have a crack? This is
Yeah.
Jerry.
Jerry, yeah, go ahead, and then we'll come back to Zach.
No, let's go for Zach. I'll wait.
Okay. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm not sure which question to go to first. I'm kind of getting split track mind here. Can I finish the Brett? If you could send the board the 2019 plan, what the results of that plan were. And then I guess the follow-up question is, it's been stated that we've been below 10% ending fund balance every year since then. Why were we not presented a plan last year, the year before that? Is that because the financial audit is what showed us that we were below 10%, and therefore we didn't know we were below 10%, or is there some other reason we weren't given a plan in the prior 2 years?
So we can certainly take the request and send that information, send that link to the board. Actually, we did. It was under an interim vice president of finance and operations. That must have been my second year here when we brought a 3-year plan to the board. I don't know if you were on the board at the time, but we certainly did. And the 2 members who are currently on the board, who were there at the time, would have been there at the time, would be Steve Mattel and Austin Folnaghy. So we certainly did. It was probably 2023. That's what I remember. Maybe 2024. Yeah, we certainly did.
And if I can add, in March or May, I think it was May, we did bring forward the forecast at the time, and I had been there just over a year, but we did bring a plan forward that didn't have a formal action, but did have a verbal approval from all of the board. And so there was a lot of discussion. The board didn't approve a plan. We don't have an approved plan. So now we're bringing a plan for your vote instead of just a nod and a heads up. Like, yes. So we did think we brought one in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did send those questions prior, so it would have been great if I could have gotten those ahead of time. To follow up on this plan doesn't just include, cuts to balance the budget. It also includes new investments. And some of those investments might be a good idea. I've talked a long time about deferred maintenance and other things that we need to invest more in. But again, there's trade-offs here. And by saying go forth with this budgeting process, we are saying these investments are more important than what's going to be cut. And we should know have some sense of what the trade-offs are before we send you out to the campus community saying cut X, Y, and Z to fund this, when we don't know if what we're funding is more important than the thing we're going to cut. It's the cart before the horse, and I think we actually do need a list of, here's $6 million in potential cuts. It doesn't have to say this is exactly what the cuts are going to be, but I think we as a board need some general outline saying, yes, these are the good things we're going to get, but this is what it's going to cost us. And if we don't know what it's going to cost us in terms of student services or community benefits or other outcomes, then we as a board are derelict in our responsibility to the community. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you. I'd appreciate getting to our other questions when we have a moment. Thanks.
All right, Trustee Rust, I believe it's your go. Voice in the sky.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to say that based on the idea of math,
Uh-oh.
Might have lost him.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Well, we did.
Hello?
We can hear you now, Jerry.
Make it very quick. What I wanted to see was a discussion. We have two credible projections of revenues and expenditures, and we had one from our administration, which I admire very, very much, and something coming from the budget subcommittee represented by Adrian, and there were two different projections. I wanted to see that discussion side by side. I also side with Zach on wanting to know the trade-offs before we do this. I'll be voting to postpone this into January.
Just a point of clarification, we're not taking a vote today.
No, this is a work session, and this is not a regular meeting where action items are taken.
Trustee?
Thank you.
Sorry, quick point of order. Normally, we have the other members visible, so that, because Julie, I think, right, is online, and we have folks online, but we can't see them at all. We don't know when their hands are up, Julie might be raising her hand for all I know. We don't see any of that right now.
You can stop sharing.
That's
Oh, is that what, just wondering if there's some way to have it all, or maybe not, maybe.
Spotlighting the speaker. Yeah.
Or just,
I apologize for the technical difficulty I'm having. I'm going in and out of the Zoom meeting. That's why I defer to Jesse to continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Now
Yeah,
it's better
then
now.
we can
Yeah.
see folks. Okay, so Kevin would like to jump in, and then if anybody else, we can go from there.
Thank you. I want to highlight one of the concerns that I have, which you presented, and that has to do with accreditation. So if this board, for whatever reason, in January, chose not to approve the 3-year mitigation plan, we would be continuing out of compliance for our board policy 6230. And that concerns me from an accreditation point of view. On November 3rd, this board heard from Dr. Selena Grace from the NWCCU, our accreditation authority, and she told us if an institution is found to be out of compliance on one of the 3 eligibility requirements, then they are automatically out of compliance. That caught my ear at the time, and I thought a lot about that. That is a very significant issue I think this board needs to seriously consider as we move forward. And I believe by pushing this decision down the road past our January 7th meeting would put our college at risk.
I'm going to put myself in the queue because apparently I'm in charge today. I appreciate this and happy that we're having this continued conversation and having more opportunities to ask questions. I hear both what Trustee Mulholland and Trustee Altucker have mentioned. The accreditation is a very serious issue, but cutting $6 million is also a very serious issue. I don't think we can keep kicking the can down the road. Like, we have to come face to face with this, obviously. I do hope that, sooner rather than later, we can get some more information on what that $6 million looks like tangibly, who and how many people will that affect, and what departments will that affect, as soon as we can get that information. I know we've got the holidays coming up and all that, but it's just, I think it makes, maybe put at ease is the wrong term, but at least puts some questions to rest. And I think it would help me a little bit more. I come to a better conclusion and an answer and be willing to push things forward. I hear the concerns about moving to January already. I completely understand that. And partly my fault that we're doing that, but here we are. So, but I do really appreciate Trustee Altucker's point about the accreditation, because, if that goes by the side, then what are we doing here? So I appreciate it. Anybody else want to jump in? Zach? Yep.
Well, I had 5 questions I sent in. I would like to get each of them answered, and then I would like to move us on to discussion, because there's some potential actions or next steps I'd like us to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to move on to the next questions. Please provide an update on the sub-9 deficits. Please include information on annual operating deficits for each program and total fund as a whole, and a stabilization path. We are working with each of those. It's not just Fund 9, there's other funds that are involved. As I said, the ending fiscal year 25 number was $5.7 million we owe as deficits to ourselves. We are giving all the programs an opportunity. They're scheduled to give us a plan of what that looks like this year till the first week in January. So we'd like to have them submit those plans, and we will report back to the board. So we are working on those with each of those individual areas, and I think giving them just the time to work for the last few weeks on this is important.
Okay, so that's $5.7 million that has built up over years, that our Fund 9 and other funds have been running deficits, that the last couple years we have been funding $1 million a year from the general fund to repay those deficits. What is the annual operating deficit order of magnitude for those funds? Are they is that $5.7 million? If we stopped getting $1 million a year,
Yeah.
how much would that increase each year if we stopped putting in $1 million a year?
I see what you're saying. So what is their operating deficit year to year?
Yeah.
Is that what you're
yeah.
asking
Like,
instead of?
If we pay off the 5.7 million, are we still going to be overspending by $500,000 a year?
Oh.
Like, or is it going to take us
Right.
longer to repay because we're overspending by $500,000
Right.
a year? So within Fund 9 or the funds
Yeah.
across all of them, what is our annual deficit spending that we're, trying to repay, but we also need to
Yep.
stop every year making the problem worse?
Yes, that is a great question. So we are working with each of them that they will not have an operating deficit every year. That is step one. So in the plan where I say we will no longer have deficit spending, that's internal as well. But as we talked about in the board meeting last time, there are 4 areas that we have to have discussion that will either require continued general fund support or a different discussion forum. And so those 4 are the ones that I listed. There's the dental restorative clinic on Willamette. There is the student health clinic that will require continued general fund support. We do have general fund talent scholarships, and they're not scholarships, they're talent grants, they are different. That is about $100,000 a year. And then we have a printing and graphics area that we are still working on a plan of what that would look like. So those 4 areas are the only ones without different decisions or general fund support that will continue to be in a deficit. The rest of them are all working on a plan. Now, aviation is the other one, which is why it's on the plan. Aviation should have tuition dollars to support it. It's an educational program. So that's why we're saying that's an important one to move to the general fund and continue to appropriately fund. So to continue that one, it should have those dollars associated with it. So that's the right thing to do. So there's 5, but we are proposing fixing aviation because that is just a hands down. The rest are discussions that we should have.
So the general fund, if we move aviation into the general fund, that's a $350,000 a year deficit from Fund 9 that should no longer be a deficit in Fund 9 because we'll be funding it through Fund 1.
Correct.
Okay. For those other programs you mentioned, do you have a general sense of the order of magnitude for the annual deficit that they're trying to close?
I would say it's between $700,000 and $800,000.
$700,000-$800,000. So the $1 million we're spending right now is actually just barely keeping us afloat. And if actually, we were actually moving backwards when we had the $350,000 from the aviation program. The $1 million is less than the deficits in Fund 9, historically.
Yes, and we're transferring, this is where Jonathan can chime in, because we're transferring a little over $1 million. So some of them are planned transfers, but the $1 million is in addition to planned transfers. So I want to make sure we're clear. We're transferring how much?
$1 million.
$1 million plus, but I think last year we put more than $1 million in, it was 1.3 million, I want to say, we transfer out of general fund. So we're making some ground. We have paid off some, but if we continue to have deficits in other areas, we won't. So that's why we're doing an immediate plan to stop overspending those revenue generating areas and correct the ones that really can't sustain themselves or need different decisions.
Okay, so that plan the board approved a few years ago to spend $1 million a year to repay the Fund 9 ending fund balance has actually just been keeping us steady. It hasn't actually helped us make forward progress really at all on the 5.7 million.
It's been minimal progress, but some progress.
Well, it would be
Yeah.
millions higher if we
Right.
hadn't been spending that $1 million a year.
Exactly,
Okay.
it would.
So I believe one of the president's goals this year under fiscal responsibility is to have an update on Fund 9 and the deficits. When are you planning on coming back to the board with this process a little further along so that we can get a really strong sense of what's going to happen with Fund 9 to deal with these deficits and ongoing problems?
And our plan is to bring that forward in March when we bring the rest of those plans. Yes,
I think that's all on my follow-ups for that question.
yes.
Kara, would you mind if we kind of go back and forth? And-
Sure,
'cause I know
absolutely.
Steve had a question too. But unless I misspoke, Steve, do you have a question?
It's kind of a comment, I think, but nonetheless, thank you for
Yeah.
the opportunity. So there was something said that I just need to push back on. So Jerry, when you were speaking just a little bit ago, you basically were asking for, competing presentations, one from our CFO and one from the faculty union, as I understood you describing that. That invites chaos in my view. We have, we have a governance process. If there are disputes about the numbers presented by the CFO, by Kara, that is a thing that they work out internally, right? There's opportunities for people to question, ourselves included, but the entire institution has opportunities to question the numbers. And that is as it should be. And we also, I think, have generally demonstrated a lot of confidence and trust and faith in Kara and her team to work through those, resolve those, answer those questions, and present the official institutional numbers. For us to invite a second, essentially another CFO's office into the realm invites total chaos, and I just need to stand firmly against that.
And I just want to reiterate a couple things. So Budget Development Subcommittee, we are reviewing projections, but their focus is also working on the budget framework and some of those pieces in their enrollment, tuition projections. We do go through what our projections are, but I also want to remind you that that group doesn't come up with the forecast. We do based on the data in the system, which we look at every day because that is our job. And we were within 1% of last year's forecast. So we have a level of accuracy and data in the time that we've been here, and we look at that all the time. If we were to start manipulating projections because the numbers don't work, we will short fund our positions and our people. And then we will be in a position to violate Oregon budget law if we do not fund all of our positions. It's just why you see me saying we can't continue with vacancy savings the way we are. So as your finance people, I am just advising you that we have to use a forecast based on what we're seeing. I feel like Jonathan has something to say.
I'll just remind everyone too that Oregon budget law requires us to set our budget allocations based on reasonable estimates. So whatever we set, if the Department of Revenue comes back to us and asks us how we came up with those allocations, we have to put our money where our mouth is and prove it. Say we set them because of all these different things that we saw. And that's what we're working through in Budget Development Subcommittee. That's what we're working through in our offices. That's what my analysts are working on. That's what the team is working on. So when it comes time for the Budget Committee to meet, we want to make sure we bring all of that data with us to say these are the reasons we're setting these budget allocations.
Could I just ask if you did you resolve that cost of living estimate? Has that been resolved? And what number are you using for that?
We are using 6% based on the historical data of what we have. And it includes, and for clarification, COLA, it is not just COLA. We also offer steps to employees, and that includes things if there's a position growth. So it's an all-inclusive number of all employee groups based on a statistical average of the last 3 years is what we're using. If you go 10 years out, it is smaller, but there were years when people were put on unemployment during COVID. The enrollment declined, so there was less staff. There's a lot of other things. The last 3 years are more like what our future is going to be. So we are still using our statistically valid number of 6%.
I think, Julie, did you have your hand up? Yeah, please, go ahead. And
So
then I'll-
you guys are touching on a couple of things that I have a little bit of opinion. So if I understand Oregon budget law correctly, and I shared some documents, is that not only what Jonathan said about being reasonable estimates, but it also wants reasonable estimates of what a 2 years out is. And it isn't like you can go back in time and just find out whatever percentage. It has to actually be based on the last couple of years of data. It can't be based on 10 years of data. The second thing is that I don't want to ever, I'm going to echo Steve's thing, ever get into a contest between the, let's see, what do we have? We've got 20 plus years of experience on with Vice President Flath. Jonathan's probably got another 20 years. I mean, the entire financial team's probably got 100 years of collective experience of financial college, general fund management. I mean, extensive stuff. In fact, while I'm here, I just want to do a call out to the classified staff who actually work on the financial team that helps put together all these documents. You guys are doing stellar work, and I just want to thank you very much. But we can't be calling out and saying, well, there's competing information. It's like, one, I don't know what the credentials are of any of the people who prepare any of that financial data and how it stands up to 5 to 100 years of actual college financial management, general fund balancing. So I really wish that we could just stop this conversation about, well, we have competing information. It's not competing. It's just that they don't like the numbers. This is what's happening. They have to communicate with the governance process, the budget subcommittee. We have to get this plan. We have to get the math. I like how Steve framed that. We just got to agree on the math. I mean, these folks have done as much as they possibly can. They have presented us with a reasonable plan to try to get us to where we need to be to financial stability over time. Now, there's no way we can answer Trustee Mulholland's questions and get to the specifics. That's actually part of the budget process. And if we start getting into a budget conversation of what cuts we want and what cuts are going to happen prior to the budget committee and the subcommittee process and the budget preparation and the budget plan and all the budget law that we have, we start getting into the point where we not only violate our own policies, but we're going to start to violate Oregon budget law. And so I think we're treading in a really gray, mucky area that gets really uncomfortable for me as a board member who has fiduciary responsibility, and I don't want to get fined. And I surely don't want our accreditation to get called into question. I sure don't want to violate Oregon budget law. I don't want to violate our own policies. And so I'm not exactly sure what exactly you all want, but I keep hearing the same hesitation. I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel comfortable making this decision. I need to know the actual specifics. And I'm like, okay, so what if you had the specifics? Then what? What are you going to do? I mean, if you don't agree on the math, then you don't agree on the math. So have a conversation about the math. And if you don't agree the $3 million has to be cut this year and that there's other things that have to happen as part of our plans, then have that conversation. But don't be having a conversation that's over somewhere else about somehow or another you need to know the specifics of things that are going to be cut when they haven't even had conversations yet with the college to say, hey, the board agrees we've got to cut $3 million this year. So this is what we think it looks like. What's your feedback? That's part of the reason they need a plan, is so that then budget development can happen. You can't have budget development without a plan. You can't have budget development without a bottom line number. And kicking this down the road and kicking it down the road and kicking it down the road, whew, we're going to be in all kinds of mischief, chaos, and problems. That's all I will say at the moment.
Thank you, Julie. Zach?
I would appreciate if my last two questions I sent in a week and a half ago could be answered, please.
Have a short.
Point of order for a minute, and kind of privilege. I'm not exactly sure what it is. May I make a request, Trustee Mulholland? Your tone is starting to come off as being angry towards staff, and I would really like it if you could kind of maintain some decorum about that. They're doing the best they can. And this isn't all about just your questions. So if you could just tone it down just a little, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well,
I think Trustee Altucker might have one more.
I just have a short comment, but wait, I just want to make sure that I wasn't looking over your direction. Zach, have you?
Again, there was a request sent to board members that if they had any questions at all, they should send them in before the deadline. I sent them in multiple days before the deadline. I don't mean to be dominating the time of the board. These are all questions that, in my opinion, should have been answered before we got here, and that I should have had 24 hours to review before we got here. So I apologize if I'm taking more time than seems appropriate to ask the questions that I sent in ahead of time, given, under the process that was outlined. So apologies if I'm frustrated these questions weren't answered prior, as it was suggested they would be when the process was originally outlined. Thanks. And if I could please have those 2 questions answered so that we can actually move on to the discussion of how we're going to move forward together.
Yes, let's move along.
Let's have that.
Do I need to repeat the questions, or?
No, I don't think so. I think she's got the questions in
Okay.
front of her,
Sorry
and,
for skipping you.
Okay.
I was not prepared to run a meeting tonight, but
Oh.
Kara, if you want to finish answering those questions,
Yes.
let's start there, and then let's
Just-
reconvene
yep,
after that.
I was just waiting for confirmation which direction we want to go.
thank you, Jess.
So after year 3, when the ending fund balance is restored and Fund 9 deficit is repaid, the college would be netting $5 million that could be reinvested in other things. How should the college plan to use these funds when it's no longer needed to restore the ending fund balance and repay deficits? In other words, what does a 4-year plan look like? And it's not quite $5 million. So if we do approve the plan, we are putting in $1 million right now. And if we put in the additional $900,000 in 28 and 29, that would free up to $1.9 million, depending on what we decide to do with those 4 areas that will require general fund continual efforts. Then we'd have that. But that's why there's also an annual review of the plan to help line that out, because we would be talking in fiscal year 2030. If everything operates as we anticipate in the plan, lots of things come and go, as we know. So that's why it's really important to continue to have a yearly update in December so we can bring that back. But there is no 4-year plan on what those up to $1.9 million would be used for yet.
I would add that one of the reasons we included in the plan, in the mitigation plan, the category called strategic investments, is so that we can demonstrate to the board and also to the college that there's some attention to be given to catalyzing innovation in the institution, new program development, investments in deferred maintenance. And so it gives hope and inspiration to the institution. It's not just a plan that is about reductions all the time. It is a plan about the future of this institution. And so while we are not specific about what might happen to those additional investments in year 4, then that's something that we would be talking about with the board at the appropriate time.
Just to follow up on the order of magnitude, so my understanding is that in year 3, we would repay $3 million of deficits from the ending fund balance and approximately $2 million from Fund 9, and that after that year, previously we thought, well, we're going to be good at that point, and that would be $5 million we could reinvest in other places. But I'm hearing $1.9 million from you. Can I get where's my numbers off?
Well, the $1.9 million is to pay off the deficits only. So when we get to fiscal year 29, when you reduce $3 million and put it in the ending fund balance, it's possible you could have that. It depends what the increase in cost goes in the next year, because we're also not including the cost of salary and inflation and all of those things in the next year. So it's going to eat into that $3 million. But it's possible, there could be, if everything stays on track and costs are minimal, there would be more to reinvest. That's possible.
Is part of that $3 million, the $1.9 million from Fund 9, that would be reinvested in year 3 in restoring, or are those additional?
No, that's additional. They're separate.
So
You're
they're two
correct.
separate things. So we'd be
Yes.
paying $3 million a year
Yeah.
to restore the ending fund balance, and we'd be paying $2 million a year to restore the Fund 9 to health.
Correct.
Which it sounds like may take us longer than we thought it would, because not only do we have $5.7 million to repay, but we also have $1 million a year deficit that we also have to overcome.
Yes, that's
Okay.
why it should be a discussion in March, yes.
Thank you. I have no more follow-ups on that one.
Jonathan has an addition.
I recently went to a NACUBO training for financial planning and strategic planning, and there was a lot of talk about how far out you go for planning, and it was unanimous across the board that institutions are not really looking beyond 3 years. They plan for 3 years to give you flexibility, but once you get beyond 3 years, there's so many ifs out in the universe that it's hard to know what that looks like. So we don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 years, but this plan gives us a chance to have flexibility for hopefully $5 million. That'd be great. But it was pretty clear that I think one of the VPs on the phone said the days of 10-year planning are gone in higher ed. You can't do that anymore because there's so much uncertainty with all the things we've been talking about lately.
And NACUBO stands for the National Association for College and University Business Officers.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take these one piece at a time. How should the college plan to spend annually on deferred maintenance over the next 10 years to successfully manage the college facilities and ensure the total cost of deferred maintenance project list doesn't grow faster than inflation? How much of this should the college expect from bonds, and how much should be paid out of the annual budget? How is the college currently spending on deferred maintenance in its annual budget, and how would it need to spend to meet the annual spending goal? And what we're transferring right now in deferred maintenance is $313,000. And we do have bond projects, which you get an update from Tom and Jennifer, and there are some deferred maintenance items on there. And as you saw, the list is getting to the end of the life of that cycle. So planning more deferred maintenance in there is likely not an option. There may be some maneuvering between each projects when they come to their end, but there isn't a substantial amount to put in deferred maintenance. But what you also see that is part of President Bolger's goals is a plan from Jennifer Hayward in April. So she is going to bring all that information forward. And what I can tell you this year is what we're doing is putting $313,000 in deferred maintenance. And she would tell you it's not enough. So things that we have talked specifically about deferred maintenance, that's why it's one of those items that we continue to invest in, because we also have to remember there's capital projects for IT that we need to continue to invest in that area too. Did you have an addition?
Yeah, 300 is what's in our operating budget, but what you don't see are the other incidental costs that we hope insurance covers. So anecdotally, we just had an incident in the Center building where it's probably going to be $300,000 of repairs that we have to do. So we pay for it one way or another. It's just, I mean, y'all know that it's better to invest for it up front, maintain your equipment and your facilities, than paying for it later on down the road. So you might see us bring a resolution to the board in January to help offset the cost of that, because we didn't plan for that. So.
A couple follow-ups. So my understanding is our current deferred project list is $130 million-ish. Is that roughly
We'll
right?
send it to you. I think it's about that, yes.
Okay. So I think we've gotten a statistic in the past that we should be spending about 1% to 2% of our total capital resources per year on deferred maintenance, and that would be about $7 million to $14 million per year. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and I think Jennifer, she's smiling back there. She has submitted some of those plans to me, and it would be great if we could afford that out of the general fund, but we're kind of squeezing the turnip on here. So if we can slowly add back to that deferred maintenance, even like Jonathan saying, the center building repair is $300,000 alone. That is the entire deferred maintenance budget. We're trying to get it covered with insurance, but that may not happen. So to even replace some things on a roof will eat up that within 1 year. So we would like to see it at $7 million. That would be great. We would, even if we could get to 1% of that, that would make an impact. So $1 million on $100 million, that would be great. But we're talking about $300,000 right now.
And do we have any sense when we go out for a bond in like 2029, 2030, how much we might be able to get put towards deferred maintenance, like in total, and put towards deferred maintenance specifically?
At this point, we're looking at some options with the financial advisor, but we don't have those wrapped up. And I think she is coming to have some discussions later in the year with the board and with President Bolger. So we'll work through what that could look like. But the numbers are changing, depending on what the market is. So we are looking at that internally.
Okay, thank you for that information. I look forward to the plan later this year.
Absolutely, in April. And again, I'm happy to write these up. I apologize I didn't send them. I thought they'd be better for a conversation because there's a lot of details, but I'm happy to write them up and get them to you through President Bolger if that's helpful. And I just want to wrap up. There is one of our fabulous analysts just sent me a message. She did find some things with fiscal year 2023 where Sue Fahey had submitted some mitigation items. I think it was wrapped up in the budget, so it was probably done a little differently than what you're seeing right now. It was wrapped up in the budget process, but we'll make sure that's included as well.
Some of us weren't on the board.
I was not even here. So we'll get that information. We will get that over to all of you.
Thank you. Now Steve
Thank you, Karen.
has a comment, and then Kevin also.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. With regard to increasing the maintenance budget, I'll call it the maintenance budget, I'm all for it. I think it makes a lot of sense. And at least there's one reason that it's sort of new-ish to me in terms of my understanding. I got it, something I stumbled on or started to learn about in my own work at the University of Oregon. If we have a fully staffed or a group of folks who are, electricians, plumbers, planners, et cetera, charged with doing all of that maintenance work, and they don't have the budget to go buy the pumps and all of the other things that they would that they're sitting idle or partly, right? So it doesn't help us to to fully staff that group, but under budget the dollars that they have to go buy all the tools and equipment, et cetera, to do their work. So if we have the staff, we need to give them the money to do their work. So that's an argument in favor of increasing that budget. That's just an additional reason to other reasons I think folks have stated. I also just wanted to underscore what I heard Kara say multiple times, that this plan is a living document, right? So it's going, and for reasons Jonathan stated as well, we're gonna get hit with so many bits and pieces of information over the next handful of years that we'll constantly need to return to it and adjust assumptions and et cetera, et cetera. This is, so I like to think, a plan I don't think has any legal weight. The budget does, but the plan doesn't, right? So there's some synonyms that might, for me anyways, are useful to think of. And like I think of it as a framework, right? We are telling us by passing this, we are setting a framework for 1,000 discussions across campus that this is our expectation. You must, develop a budget that fits within this framework. And there is a whole process that's out there, right, where everybody who wants to participate, make suggestions, et cetera, has that opportunity. We get reminded of that frequently. It doesn't mean they get what they want, but they have the opportunity to express what they want, why they think it's important. We have laid out our values, right, fiscal sustainability, topmost, student success, that might not be the precise words, but that was sort of the second and on down that list. So we have given a lot of, it's important for us to establish that framework and imbue it with our values, so that all the discussions that happen outside our view have some focus and guidance to them. And so I continue to think that's what we're being asked to do. And then a year from now, if you tell us, wow, we saved a bunch of money that we didn't see coming in this kind of way, or our PERS bond just did amazingly well, and now we don't have to pay as much. I don't know. Who knows what you'll tell us? We might get hit with a bunch of windfalls. It might just be the opposite, by the way. We'll adapt. But it's important for us to establish a clear framework. If we don't, then every single time that any budget or suggestion gets made as to how to handle it, the underlying assumptions will be challenged unless we firmly establish those now. No, we believe the underlying assumptions, and that is the foundation from which we have to make a plan.
Kevin, and then Zach, and anybody online.
All right, thanks. Just quickly, I'm sitting here thinking we have some difficult decisions to make. We're having good conversations, difficult conversations, and we're looking at a $3 million hole in the budget. And I'm thinking, well, we've got some sister organizations here locally. One is looking at a $30 million hole. And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I'm on the LCC board. Again, significant, large issue, but it's not a $30 million issue.
Zach?
Let me start just by saying I think this is a really important document and a really important process for us to work through as a board. I think that this plan needs to be made the board's plan. And I think that the way we do that is by ensuring that the board has a solid understanding of what the trade-offs are and can make slight adjustments if needed prior to passage. So what I would like to do is I would like to request the board chair to form a subcommittee to refine the 3-year plan in consultation with the president and to make a recommendation to the board. I believe the chair has that authority to create that subcommittee, so I plan on making that request to the board chair. that could then make some slight adjustments to this plan as needed to get a solid sense of the outline of what $6 million in budget cuts that would be the trade-off for adopting this plan might be, and to make a recommendation for the full board as soon as they are able, ideally in January. So just to be aware that that's the request that I intend to make to the board chair, so that we can get a plan that has the full buy-in from the full board, that is a plan that the board has made its own and feels fully comfortable with. And so that's the request that I plan to make, so that we can move forward and get a plan that the entire board and the entire community can be proud of. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to put myself in the queue and then come to you, Julie. Mine is more of just a procedural question in general. As a City of Eugene Budget Committee member, we are notified anytime that there's a meeting where the budget is being discussed or a budget item, or, you know, regardless if it's not necessarily an invite, it's just an awareness, like an alert. And I'm just curious if that happens with our budget committee members, because I mean, this seems like a very important document. You know, it would be really nice just to make sure that they are aware that this is being discussed. If they don't happen to check the news or, you know, watch the YouTube, they don't want to watch a 5-hour meeting. You know, maybe they just, you know, a little blurb that this is happening and here's the agenda, I guess. That's kind of what we get from the city. So I'm just curious, I guess, maybe not directed to you, Kara, but the president.
Yeah. We have, since I've been at the college, we have not had a habit of doing that, advising or alerting the budget committee, the 7 members of the community, that the budget is being planned. Usually they come in May, and we are hoping to start that a little bit earlier next year. But usually they come in May, ready to show up and take a look at the budget document that they would have received about 2 weeks before.
Sure. I don't know, we can talk about this, I'll send an email, but I think personally I would like that we notify them moving forward, just especially when we're in a deficit operation at this point. Just so they can, you know, hopefully just an alert that we send out to the board already that says the agenda, the meeting's happening. By the way, this is also on it for the budget committee members, just because I think this is important and, you know, might give them some more runway to prepare, I guess.
Sure, they may tune in. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Julie, please. You're muted, Julie.
Sorry. I'm a little confused of how that would even look, the proposal of a board taking away the role of our employee and her fiscal team and saying, we don't care what you had to say, we're going to do it all on our own. And the board's going to meet privately in a subcommittee. We're going to discuss what we think might be the best deal. You don't have any information except for last year's budget. Some forecasts in the documents. So I'm not exactly sure how that looks. So I'm confused about that. And then number 2, with regards to the budget committee, although, okay, fine, I just remind this board, and sorry for Jesse and for Jerry that you weren't here, but we discussed this plan at the budget committee. The budget committee was aware of this when the president and her team presented a deficit budget and said, here's the condition we're in, and we need to be able to do something. They went back, came up with a plan to fix the deficit. We came up with the budget that we currently have. I mean, that was all discussed, and the budget committee was well aware of that. And so as we go forward into this year now, it's January almost because holidays, and the budget process has begun in trying to have all these open settings. February, they're trying to get some stuff done. There's timelines in the Oregon budget law that says when budget preparation needs to be done, when all the committee meetings need to be held. And if we continue to keep pushing this down the road and decide that we now are going to be the ones, separate from the budget committee, separate from the budget officer and her team and Oregon budget law that says how it will be, that we now, because we're a board, is going to be the one that makes the decisions and develops a 3-year plan of how this would be, even though we don't have a clue of how that will be done. So I'm really confused how we make a proposal for an ad hoc committee to create a board 3-year plan instead of a college 3-year plan. Because I remind this board again, we oversee the college and we have a fiduciary responsibility, but we don't run it. And we don't do line item vetoes on budgets. We don't get into the minutia. We don't know how many, we don't talk about any of that. We talk about these big buckets. So I just don't understand. And I really call into question what's really going on and what you really want ultimately. Like, what do you need? Because the bottom line is we have a deficit. If we don't have a plan, then we can't methodically go and do it over 3 years. It's just going to show up now. And I get worried, and I think maybe President Bolger and her team can answer this question, is reminding everybody that the general fund balance is actually there to help with cash flow. And so I start worrying as we start pushing things down the road and how we prepare and what we look at. It's like what happens in February and the legislature meets and they decide they are going to hit us with a $2 million reduction. You know, what does that do to cash flow in April? You know, and so what does it do? I mean, like, God, this isn't our wheelhouse. That's theirs. This is, I mean, excellent work. And so I just got to go on record that it's like, I just don't know what kind of mischief and chaos you guys are creating. But man, I go back to that second slide with the red blocks and the yellow blocks. We're heading toward some pretty significant potential costs to our accreditation and to our reputation. You know, no one's going to want to give us a bond if we're going to continue to play with this kind of mischief.
President.
I'd like to have Kara talk a little bit about what we've faced in the past that you're aware of with respect to our cash flow and what's really important to us here as well. Just give us the facts.
Yeah, and what I can say is the odd years are the short cash years generally. And what you see is we did not have to do that in 2025, but in 2023, the college did get a $5 million short-term loan. They call them TANS loans. The state kind of pulls money together. It did cost, like I said, $250,000. But what you will see and what I have seen, and we are creating new processes in our financial team, but we are creating cash flow processes. And what I can tell you is it definitely dips. Right now, we're great, right? We bring in property taxes. We'll bring that. If the state does a reduction of $2.5 million, which it's 2.48 something proposed in February, March, that means it's cut from our April payment and we will have no other cash flow. Property taxes don't come in. We do have some grant programs. We do have other things that come in. And if we cannot make payroll or cannot pay our bills, we will slowly have to delay all of those bills. We're required legally to pay people. We will have to come out and bring loans into play if we do not get a sustaining ending fund balance. And the worst case is to be in a position where you cannot make your payroll. It's the worst feeling. So you would see me getting an immediate action to get an immediate loan, which is really hard to do because when you're not planning for those things to happen, it's hard to get that financing as well because we're a public entity. So keep all those things in mind. The cash flow is my biggest heartburn in addition to all the other things, accreditation. But I'm a finance person. I'm paid to be here and run finances. So I'm going to tell you from that perspective that when you see the cash flow, and you know, Jonathan's giving the note, one payroll for a month is $7 million, $7 to $8 million, and that is about what we have in reserve. So if we are not paid in April, don't have anything in May, don't have anything in June, and we don't get that till July, then I'm not sure what you do unless you have $25 million in the bank, which we don't.
Thank you, Kara. Steve?
Thank you.
No, I'm good.
I just want to really appeal to you, Zach, to, you know, reconsider where you're at, you know, and the idea to request a subcommittee. I think where we're at is, you know, just as a reminder, we've been told by experts a handful of times this year, and I think there was general agreement that it made sense to us that we as a board should be focused on ends, right? And then we have to entrust the means to our, you know, to our president, to her administration. she's taken it a step further and sort of promised us that her means would be values-based, our values, as a matter of fact, right? So it's a values-based approach that they have spent some time developing. It's hard to let go of the, the sense of, control over the thing, over that process, right? Because, and that's, to me, some part of what we're being asked to do or being told is sort of best practice. And it's also difficult because we all can see that there will be cuts. We don't know to whom and what, but we'll hear about it soon enough, and it's going to be painful no matter what it is. But anyways, I think we're in a partnership. Our job is, setting up that framework, the ends. There's a values-based means. I think if anything, if we need more, I guess I would ask you to reconsider the proposal and maybe we could go down a different path, where we get some kind of monthly check-ins or whatever it is as to how is that means-based process proceeding? What can you tell us about, in terms of meetings that have been had, ideas that are developing, in consultation with different constituencies across the institution? That might be a middle path that, to give us some sense that it's proceeding in ways that everybody's having their opportunity to weigh in, that our values are being adhered to, that kind of a thing. As opposed to something that you just proposed, because I worry that undermines the message to, stakeholders all across the board and invites, counter proposals that will delay the need to act in May.
Go ahead, Zach.
Thank you for those points to each of my colleagues. I appreciate your perspectives. Respectfully, we as a board are a brain trust for the college. Our job is not just to say looks good, looks bad, but to actually try and make things better. I think we as a board, if we spent a little time, we could make this plan better, or at a bare minimum, we can get full buy-in from the full board such that when it does go forward to the campus community, that buy-in is clear, that buy-in is from the entire board as a whole. Okay? So my hope would be that we could make the plan better, because that's what I think our job is to think long and hard and help the president make better decisions through our thoughts, the ability to listen to people she might not hear from, the ability to weigh community concerns that the president might not be aware of. We as a board need to do our job too, right? It's not just looks good, looks bad. It's how do we improve it? How do we provide value and make it better? Okay, so that's my intention as I come to this process, and I hope that others can accept that that's where I'm coming from as part of this process. Okay, so in terms of making the end product better, I think that a subcommittee of the board is the only way to actually have a small group of people get together to do the deep dive and get the information necessary to make this plan an A+ plan. Okay, and not just B or whatever we think it is right now. Okay, so that's my intention with requesting a subcommittee, is that we can make it better. Separate and distinct from the subcommittee, I think we as a board owe it to ourselves and to the community to fully understand the consequences of the decisions that we're making, not after the fact, but before it happens. So I have a motion that I've drafted, and I'm concerned it won't get a majority of the board because of past dynamics. But I think it's incredibly important that we get this information before we approve the final plan. And if it doesn't pass, then I'll accept that.
Well, Zach,
Am I allowed to make a
I
motion?
don't think we are in a work session.
Okay.
Our parliamentarian isn't here.
I would like,
Correct, we're not allowed to.
No, we are not.
okay, well, I will just make it as a request. I would again like to request what I asked for prior to this meeting, which is for the president to please provide a list of potential cuts for each year of the 3-year plan equal to the amounts of cuts called for in the plan in order from least to most painful. Without that piece of information, I don't think that we actually understand what we're approving and what the consequences would be, and that we would be derelict in our duty if we approved a plan that did not have that. So I'll request that we get that information, please. And I'm also going to request to our board chair that he form a subcommittee so that we as a board can try and add value and make this plan as good as it can be before it goes out to the campus community for review. Thanks for your time.
I have Trustee Altucker and then Trustee Weisman.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate those comments, and I'll make some comments about my responses. And I know that Chair Folnegi will be reviewing this meeting once he gets back online and the electricity turned back on. My concern about a subcommittee is exactly how you described it, Zach. It's a small group of people making some really monumental decisions. And I look at our board, I agree, we're a board of 7 smart, intelligent, caring, passionate people, but I don't see too many educational professionals on the board. And so I have to really delegate that expertise to the president and her staff. And for me, you've demonstrated that. I'm completely comfortable with the recommendations and the thought processes that go into these difficult decisions. Thank you.
Julie?
I have a question for Dr. Bolger, President Bolger. How would the request that Trustee Mulholland is making for a list of all potential cuts over the next 3 years, how they would be, how do they compare? How does that potentially, and does it potentially violate, one, our own internal budget procedure that starts in February, or it's going on now? 2, potentially violates the Oregon budget law by having conversations about budgeting cuts prior to, and specifics on budgeting cuts. We're not talking about that we need to come up with $3 million. We're talking about here's where that's going to happen. How does that potentially violate the budget law, Oregon budget law, and other potential conflicts with our own policies or whatever? Could you address that at all?
Sure. Well,
And I do have a follow-up, but I just want to get that question answered.
I'll start with my own values as a leader, and I certainly value college input on these matters during the budget planning process. And so I will ask Kara to repeat what she said about the process that we're in for FY27. We are collecting information now from the institution about those very matters, what the institution believes in terms of what's of value to the institution. And we are going to be bringing back a list with no values in the list, except the board's values. So we will include and align the list with the board's values. So that's fiscal stability, and that's student success, and I think community responsiveness was on the list as well. And so in that order, basically, is what I recall. I think I've missed one about staff, and it's in that listing as well. And so we will be bringing that back in March. What I would say about doing the same kind of thing for the out years, there are a few unknowns. And that's why we bring the forecast back to the board so that the board can see that. So I would be really reluctant to have the similar kind of list for fiscal year 28 and fiscal year 29. That is a list that we would feel really confident in. We would go through the same process that we're going through this year. That's what we intend to do with the college, so that we can have the best thinking that comes from the institution, people who are student-facing and people who live this work every day. Kara, can you put a fine point on the timeline, what we're planning to do again, if you'll repeat that?
Sure, the timeline is, this is our mitigation plan, and it's a plan with just the numbers, but bringing forward the $3 million proposal in the March meeting for the board to review and look at. What we are doing is all the other processes at the same time, and when we started this process, my recommendation to President Bolger and all of the leadership team is we don't make decisions until we talk to our college community. They have decades and decades of experience throughout the college, and we need to allow people to have that. So I wholeheartedly do not have a list for you to take action on, nor do I recommend taking action on 28 and 29 specificities at this point, because there are so many things that can change, which is why I keep emphasizing this is a plan that we have, and we will monitor it every year because there will be changes. I can guarantee you in 3 months, something might look differently. So we want to keep monitoring that. And so we'll keep bringing that process. Approving this plan does not negate the fact that we will bring that forward in March and give you the opportunity for the things you are talking about. And what we also don't want to do is with a separate board meeting, then you also trigger things in our collective bargaining agreement where they're required notice, they're required other things. When you take this and put it in the board purview, you do bridge on making budgetary decisions. We're still planning the budget, but you are the deciding body of that budget. That makes it a different context. So we need to be careful what we're doing with that. So a question, if I may ask, is there concerns with the numbers that are in the plan, or is it the unknown of the plan, or what pieces of it would make the board more comfortable? Can I ask that question?
Please do. You mentioned, and I will also ask that same question, because you mentioned that it's a B plan, and I was wondering why you might call it a B plan. I don't like being a B student, honestly. I'll tell everybody that. And so why are you calling it a B plan? We'd love to know what more you need from us.
So to answer Kara's question first, and then I'll try and remember President Bolger's question. What concerns me first and foremost is the unknowns. We're being asked to tacitly approve, basically $6 million in cuts over 2 years, and having no idea where that's going to come from gives me heartburn. I would say the second question is then the balance and trade-offs between those unknown budget cuts and what's being proposed for spending, right? That without knowing these unknowns, I can't even get to question B of, is this the right trade-offs between the things that we're cutting and the things that we're trying to invest in? So number one, the unknowns, and number two, what are the trade-offs between those unknowns and what's put into the document? And then I'll just refer, this feels like half a plan. It feels like this is where we'll spend the money if we can cut this much, but then, for this thing to fly, we're going to need this much in cuts, and we're going to need this much in spending. And only identifying the spending and not identifying any of the cuts is setting us up for failure, in my opinion. So, I would like to have at least an outline of this is generally where we think $6 million is available, so we can have a sense of like, yeah, I think we can live with that, or we can make some slight tweaks to make it work, or, oh my God, we're cutting to the bone to turn this organization around, which I agree, we have some issues, but, we're a cruise ship or a cargo ship, not a speedboat. And sometimes these things take time. They take getting buy-in from the broader campus community. And if we as a board don't even feel comfortable with the starting point, I don't know how we can expect the community to be comfortable with the process. So that's my part, is that we need to have both wings of this plan. We need to have at least some outline of where the cuts are going to come from, so that we can have, as a board, understand the trade-offs that we're making and the balance between what we're cutting and what we're investing in.
So if I can just follow up on, I'm glad that you got the chance to answer the questions, and I thank you. I just want to respond and kind of just push back a little bit on the whole idea that the board is a brain trust for the college. although all of us have a lot of experience in a lot of different roles, we are not CPAs. And even if we were a CPA, we might not be a CPA of a educational institution with bunches of funds, tax, bonds, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's complex. It's incredibly complex. I have a very strong budgeting information, and it's complex for me. I can appreciate that Trustee Mulholland has a good brain for numbers, but I find it incredibly arrogant to think that the board knows better than the team of financial experts, including our president, and what they're bringing to us. There's no way the board can actually know better and that we would be better. That is so almost condescending. And well, I can't say almost. It is condescending to call it B, to tell our experts in the room that they are not good enough, that you and the board as a whole knows better. And that's just simply not true. You might have an opinion about financial management and what's best. You might have a lot of very specific questions, and you might want to get into the weeds on every single piece, but you aren't an expert either. And even if you were, you still don't know what they know. And I just, this is really a very uncomfortable conversation to listen to. And it really kind of exemplifies pretty much what's kind of going on right now with the board. You are not going to get the board's approval as a whole on anything. And then a subcommittee of 3 of you, who I'm pretty sure I can tell you exactly who they will be, to then come up with its own budget and its own plan of where cuts would be is absurd. And I'm not sure anybody would give us a bond ever again. I don't think anyone would give us a loan ever again if the board took those kinds of actions. So I just want to call it out and say you are walking outside the lines of what our boundary line is and role as a board. And we are trustees. We do not run this college. We are not in the weeds. We are not CEOs. And man, we are walking a really thin line of possibly putting this college at risk and harm's way. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's what I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
I believe Steve, and I already went to you, yes? Yeah, so Steve, please.
I'm not an expert on some of the other institutions in the area and what they're how they're dealing with their processes. I just basically read the Lookout articles. Thank you, Mike. So we know that many of them are going through similar processes. I don't think 4J or the University of Oregon or Springfield Schools or, whatever, there's other institutions that are dealing with budget cuts are doing anything significantly different than what is being proposed here, right? And there's probably a good reason for that, right? Because that's this tried and true method that we're at a very high level. We set some direction. We need to get here. We are persuaded that we're in a bad spot and we need to move to a better spot. And then we, the thing I'd just add on for what Julie said, it's not what we're being told by the president and Kara. It's not just their small team of financial experts. They have a whole, governance process, a process that takes into consideration the math and the numbers, but also a whole bunch of other things from the college, from faculty, students, et cetera, all throughout to get to a final a budget that's sort of consistent with the plan that we set forth here. So just to sum up, what is being proposed to us is very similar in terms of process, I believe, as to what the other institutions in the Eugene Springfield area are undergoing.
I'm going to jump in really quick. My question is this, how feasible is it to get I don't think my vote would hinge on this by any means, but I'm just curious about it because I believe that Trustee Mulholland brought up a good point. But like the feasibility of, based on percentages of the staff or program funds, this is what would most likely be a part of that 6 million. Like even if it was just a 30,000 foot overview of like, here's potentially where it would be, just to try and ease some pains with this. Just curious if there's feasibility there.
Yeah. What's your best thinking on that? I think it would be challenging without the information coming from the college. I certainly, that's my value as a leader, and so I would want to not preempt the institution with respect to that. I would say that what we've had reported from our finance team is that 85% of our general fund budget is in salaries. It gives me a little bit of heartburn, frankly. And so I think that the board can probably see with the information that we've provided to the board where reductions generally may come from. We've talked about the Fund 9 deficits. We talked about the 4 top areas that continue to draw from the general fund, kind of baked into how they operate. And so if there's more information that we can give to the board that would help the board get a sense of where reductions could occur, then please let me know. And if you want to have a conversation with me, I can give you a sense of what I've been hearing also. It's not final from the college community, but I can certainly give you a sense of what I've been hearing.
Go ahead, Kara. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think it would be, what would create the most heartburn is giving you a general idea without taking the input of the campus community. So to be honest, we just released our last round of thought exchange, which is give us your ideas. Now are the ideas. We built some framework around what we think are mission critical and where do we want to be. So getting people thinking strategically that way. That doesn't close till January 15th. And so what you're asking us to do is to come up with something before that. At the same time, what I would also say is that we are working within a number. We keep saying 6 million, but we're only talking about 3 million. I've committed to bringing back a plan every year, so you will see another plan next December that would address the 2.5 million that is in next year. So we're talking about 3 million. Essentially, majority of that 3 million is reinvested in the college, but we have to strategically look at this differently. And so what we need to do is give ourselves enough time. So what I'm asking for is the commitment that, yes, these numbers look like they will get us on target, because again, the first year is a break-even year. For those of you who are on the budget committee, on the board, and part of the budget committee, the issue we had when we brought in a deficit spending budget is they kicked it back to us and said, we're not doing that. And so we had to cut $3.5 million out of that budget, which is more than what we're talking about right now. So we are only trying to break even next year so we can continue on this path and create another deficit budget, which is what we'll send to the budget committee unless we're cutting people before then or cutting something in a response scenario, but they will probably kick it back to us because they said, we don't want to see this next year. We need you to bring in a better plan. And that was the 7 community members with the board. So I just, mind you, we are listening to everything people are saying, and we are doing a similar alignment. We even gave the board a copy of a resolution last month that was very similar to what we're talking about. So I hear you. It feels like there's a level of mistrust, and there's a level of mistrust financially in the college that we have been working through, and I can do no more than continue to be transparent and bring you that information and continue to work with President Bolger, and we are bringing those things forward that we're committed to, and I think we've brought those things. So those are all the things I would say.
Thank you, Kara. I just want to help you, Trustee, with a time check. So it's on my clock here, it's 5:47, and we do have another meeting that's starting at 6 o'clock.
Great.
And
Well, as the designee, we'll try and hurry this forward. Zach, really quickly, and then we'll ask Steve and Kevin, and then Julie, if you want to jump in.
Go ahead.
Okay. Steve?
Zach, I wanted to just follow up on something else that you said. Basically, the trade-offs between investments, we'll call them, or whatever, strategic investments and financial something true-ups or whatever the term was, versus cuts. And I think I do think actually that that's an area where we could lean in a little bit more. There's some, flexibility there, right? So, in terms of trying to listen to each other, compromise, do what's best for the institution. I always listen to what you have to say. I'm hoping you're listening to what I have to say. I definitely agree that I have no qualms whatsoever that I believe the things you say and do, by the way, are because you believe that they're the right thing to do for the best interest of the institution. I have no qualms about any of that. So I do think, anyways, Zach brings up a good point that, okay, well, I don't know, maybe that there's some, I don't know exactly arbitrariness, that we haven't really delved into that split, let's say between strategic investments and cuts. And if you'd be willing to, relinquish sort of some of the concerns that you have, that's an area I'd be willing to lean into in terms of trying to provide more direction to the institution.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, real quick, thanks. We're a public institution. We have a board policy that we're going to comply with. That's my hope. But I'd just like to point out, in the private enterprise world, a 3-year plan is, 2.5 years too long. So we have a fairly long, final approach on this thing. So just to point that out.
You want to go ahead? Yeah.
Thank you to staff, President Bulger. I appreciate the work and thoughtfulness that has gone into this plan. I think that we as a board, through some small group conversations, have the chance to potentially make it even better. I don't know if we can or not, or what those changes might be, but I think it would be reasonable for us to get a small group of folks together to ask some more questions and potentially make some recommendations for some minor changes that would then come to the full board for discussion before approval of a final document. Our job as a board is to help improve things that were presented and make them as good as they can be, not just to say yes or no. And given the timelines, and I think it would be very difficult for us to bring this full board back together to have those conversations, and that's why I think that a subcommittee could have some of those conversations in a short time frame where they could provide some meaningful additional insights that can help shape the community, shape this plan in a way where the campus community can trust the process, can respect the process, and feel that the board has full buy-in for the process. And I think that this is one way of making it a better, a better document and getting more buy-in from both the board and from the broader campus community. And I hope that folks will see it from that perspective and that we can try and make this as good of a plan as we can before we approve the plan would be my ideal outcome. And I just really appreciate all the time that everyone spent on this and my fellow board members, and know that I share many of your concerns and that I want to land this plane in an effective manner. Thank you.
Great. Trustee Weisman, do you have anything you'd want to add?
A couple of reminders. I appreciate Kevin's response about the 2.5 years too long. You've got to remind everybody that our state legislature didn't do a biennium budget this year for that very reason. There's so much uncertainty. So, all of our colleagues, all of our municipalities or nonprofits, they're all trying to figure out how to plan. And so the experts in the room are doing that too. They've got their ear to the ground. They actually know what's going on. I think that the confidence that we can have in the college and working through the governance process that we have, the team and the experts in the room are actually doing that. Again, I remind everybody, we are not the experts. We cannot improve a plan when we are not part of the budgeting process. And frankly, I still am alarmed that we would want to suggest to the college community, to the entire staff of the administrative staff, and to all of our funders, all of our accreditors, that we are going to bypass the budget committee process. We're going to bypass the planning process, and we are going to have our own committee, and we're going to come up with our own plan, and we are going to implement that. And we're going to just bypass everybody so that we can help, quote unquote, restore confidence. And I don't mean to be sarcastic. I mean to be really vehemently opposed to these kinds of actions. We are putting the college in harm's way. And even though you might have some good intents on what you think should happen, and the chances are I'll lose, the majority votes will have their way, I just want to go on record again, just saying that we are putting the college in harm's way, we're putting our accreditation in harm's way, and we're putting our reputation in harm's way. And I see the writing on the wall again, and I'm really disillusioned, disheartened, and that's all.
All right.
Yes.
Dr. Bolger?
Yeah, trustee, would you like to check in to see if trustee Rust is still here? I'm not sure.
Is Jerry, he's not on anymore? All right.
Okay.
Well, then, if the board's okay, can I just finish the rest of this, I guess? I guess we'll move on to the board member questions and comments. Hearing not Kevin?
I've got some always, yeah.
I figured.
And I'll make it quick, because I know we have another meeting coming up. And I was hoping that Chair Folneggi would be here. I understand why he's not, and he would have given you information about the ad hoc committee that was put together to address how to improve our policies towards public comment. So hopefully he'll be back on January 7th, and we'll hear from him. I want to say that higher education is in the midst of probably one of its greatest challenges ever, and I don't mean to catastrophize or speak in hyperbole, but we have some really significant challenges facing us. And what I will continue to do in these questions and comments opportunities is to urge the board to look to the future to help differentiate LCC and make LCC even more indispensable to our community than it is now. And so I'm always going to be kind of pushing that edge a little bit. One of the things, and you know, I keep pushing this book. I don't get a commission, but it's a great book if you haven't read it. It's called The Great Upheaval by authors Levine and Van Pelt. And actually, Dr. Van Pelt has spoken to this board twice, and it's just fascinating. But one of the things that they bring up is this idea of a demographic. It's not a bulge, it's the opposite of a bulge, right? So we're already seeing fewer babies being born, fewer K through 12 students. We're seeing that even here locally. And so I would urge the board to work with the president and have some discussions about, okay, how is that going to affect LCC in 3, 5, 10 years? And what are the things that we can be thinking about and doing now to kind of future-proof? And instead of, you know, being drowned by that wave of change, we're going to ride that sucker, right? And there's some great opportunities for this college. I'm very optimistic, actually, in the big scheme of things. So I will continue to push the idea that this board, among our other important duties, is to work with the president and her staff to future-proof our college and make it even better.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments?
We'd be happy to work with the board on that. And we've got some reports coming up, and we're excited to talk to the board about them. There's one about student success that's coming up in January. And so we'll be talking about these subjects. I think that would be fascinating for all of us.
All right. Next item was future meeting dates. We obviously have one happening in 3 minutes. Was there anything else you wanted to add, President Bolger, on future meeting dates?
No, thank you.
Okay, yes. All right, the next item would be adjournment. So I guess we don't have to have a motion, so yes?
ACCT National Legislative Summit, please.
Oh, this thing that's highlighted in yellow here. Yes. Discuss interest in attending 2026 ACCT Legislative Summit here.
We had, I'll be helpful here. So we had 2 individuals on the board who expressed an interest in the ACCT National Legislative Summit, which is in February every year. That's basically our capital days. We go to DC. And we usually, the board usually gives preference to individuals who've never been before. We had 2 individuals who expressed an interest. If Nicole can remind me of who those individuals are.
That was Jesse Maldonado and Zach Mulholland.
Okay.
I already stated that I would defer to anyone that has been less recently than I have been.
Okay. Well, trustee, if you're interested, Jesse, then we're going to take you to Washington with us.
Jesse goes to Washington.
Great, Jesse goes to Washington, if I don't get there enough already.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Great. And with that, right on time, the meeting will be adjourned.